All right, confession time. I am a division of responsibility dropout. Now, let me explain. When I first started having kids, I was desperate to find the right way to feed them. Because of my eating disorder history, I just wanted to make sure that I was doing the right things when feeding my kids in order to support them in having a healthy relationship with food. I wanted them to be able to eat intuitively and enjoy all foods and not have the baggage that I had when it came to food and eating. And so I found the division of responsibility when my kids were really little, and I bought all the books, all the Ellen Satter books on my bookshelf, studied them, read them, learned the material. And for years, I followed it. I did all the things that it said to do until it stopped working for us. We were having more mealtime battles. Mealtimes were becoming stressful, especially as my kids were getting older and our family continued to grow. And there continued to be many different preferences when it came to food. We have selective eaters, picky eaters. So it was becoming a mess and a nightmare. And I realized that the division of responsibility was becoming a new rule in itself in my mind. It was something that was starting to feel really rigid and making food not enjoyable. Mealtimes were not pleasant. And that's when I realized I need to give this up and adopt eating and feeding my kids in a way that supports our family and our kids' unique needs. And that's what I want to chat with you today about. If you have found the division of responsibility and have also followed it to a T in order to support your kids in having a healthy relationship with food, but maybe you feel like you're doing it wrong, or maybe you feel like you're failing, or it's not working for your family, you are not alone. Let's dig in to why that is. Okay, so first, what is the division of responsibility? It's an approach to feeding kids that really kind of dictates what our kids' jobs are with eating and what are our jobs with feeding, because there are distinct roles and responsibilities. So division of responsibility says that as the parent, you are in charge of what you're feeding your kids, when you're feeding them, and where you're eating. And our children's jobs when it comes to eating is deciding what they want to eat from the foods that have been provided and how much, or if they want to eat at all during any given eating time. So in theory, it all sounds great, right? But where can you maybe be getting stuck? And this is where we got stuck as a family. I definitely felt that the rigidity around the strict eating times was just not working for our family. And, the whole concepts of, if your child is asking for something else that you didn't serve that night, you simply tell them, this is not on the menu for tonight. This is what we're having. Or, kids who are wandering in the kitchen or who are looking or rummaging in the fridge or the pantry for food in between the designated eating times that you may have. That was another issue that we were having. My kids were hungry between the meal and snack times that I had scheduled out for us. And I didn't know how to handle that because according to the division of responsibility, kids should come to the table hungry, which I do think can be beneficial, but not for all kids. And it wasn't working for my kids. The other place that we were getting stuck is with selective eaters or sensory sensitivities around food. There was a lot of things that I would prepare for our family, trying to consider everyone's preferences in mind, and they just wouldn't like it, or they didn't want to eat at that time, but I knew that they were hungry. And again, felt stuck in this idea of telling them, well, that's not on the menu. This is what we're having. Or they didn't eat at that meal because they didn't like it or feel safe, maybe with what was offered. And wandering into the kitchen after dinner is done and looking for food and asking to eat, and then telling them like the kitchen's closed felt really counterintuitive to supporting their needs, their innate needs that they were trying to express, that I felt like, well, this is not the time that we're supposed to eat. And so it really just was starting to feel very conflicting and rigid. And that's where you might be finding yourself stuck too, that if there is any sense of rigidity, or you feel like I'm like supposed to follow these rules in order to make sure that my child has a good relationship with food, but we're actually feeling more stress. I'm actually feeling like I'm not doing this right, or there's so many things that I need to keep in mind. Am I following the rules? Am I doing the things. And that rigidity around food can be really problematic. And those are some of the things that I just want you to consider. If you're starting to feel more stressed, if you're starting to be more concerned about the approach and less inclined to be able to respond to your child in front of you, then that is where the division of responsibility can maybe start to become a little bit clouded in terms of what it's helping you achieve, what it's helping your family achieve in terms of your food culture. And so some of the things that have worked for me instead of rigidly following the division of responsibility are a few things that I'd love to share with you. So first is really focusing on connection over control. I think for me as a mother who has an eating disorder history, that was something that I had to really be honest with myself, is that sometimes there's this hidden agenda that can come up when it comes to feeding our kids, because there's things or ways that our kids eat that can be really triggering to our old stuff. It can bring up things for us, or we might feel uncomfortable or unsafe with what our kids are gravitating towards or how they're eating. And that is where the division of responsibility can start to become manipulated for more control reasons. Instead, I would encourage you to just think about connection. How are you connecting with your kids? And really a big piece of that is getting curious about their needs and the things that they're expressing to you. This is a really important part where when we're so focused on following the rules or the framework, we are not able to see the child in front of us and understand some of the unique needs that they might have. Maybe they do need a different meal. As an example, we have a couple picky eaters in our family, and there's been plenty of times where I've served food. I added things that I banked on them wanting to eat or thought they would like to eat, and they still didn't want it, but were hungry. And I think having that responsiveness to understand, like, I know my kid's hungry, but they don't want to eat this food. Yeah, you can go grab a bowl of cereal out of the kitchen, even if it's not on the menu. And I think being able to respond to our children comes first with the connection that we're building with them, being able to get curious about their needs and the things that they may need with food that are maybe not necessarily what we are providing. That is a key piece. Another thing here that's really important is still maintaining structure. Like, I think when people hear me say I'm a division of responsibility dropout, that can sound like, oh, you're just letting all the stuff go. You're just letting it be free for all, letting your kids eat whatever they want all day long. And that is not the case. Kids really do thrive with predictability around food, and that comes with structure. And that is something that division of responsibility does promote, having structure and predictability around eating times for our kids. The important distinction is that that structure should be flexible. And that is something that I have had to learn myself. You know, I might have an eating time planned, but my kiddo might be hungry half an hour before that. And I do not want to deny my children what they need, especially when they are very connected to their bodies and expressing things like, I'm hungry. And yes, I am making dinner, but being able to be flexible can also help us be more responsive to our kids' needs. Okay, so another thing to consider is really offering your child trust and guidance. These things together. It's not hands off, but really meeting our child where they're at. And I'll give you an example of this. One thing that the division of responsibility usually recommends is having and serving meals family style, which I love. I'm a huge proponent of that. It makes things really simple for our family. But one thing that I noticed is that this was overwhelming for a couple of my kids. And that's where I realized that they weren't going to go in and serve themselves, that I had to be supportive and help them and give them some guidance and also trust them to make the decisions that they needed regarding the food that is available at any given eating time. And so it's not about being hands off. It's not about having this permissive approach to feeding, but really kind of finding the middle ground or the gray area. It's really easy to make feeding extreme about following one approach or by doing one thing. And division of responsibility can sometimes fall into that camp where there's a lot of rigidity around it. Like, you have to do it this way. And I used to be there. I was a division of responsibility purist because I felt so strongly about preserving my kids' innate ability to eat and supporting them in building a positive relationship with food. But what I realized is that more than a certain framework or approach or rules to feeding is that they needed a mother who was connected to them, responsive to them, and able to understand what some of their unique needs were that maybe fell outside the camp of the division of responsibility. So I hope this gives you some things to consider. If you are struggling with the division of the responsibility at home, please know that you're not alone. I have some great tools and resources for you that I'll link in the comments to help you raise your intuitive eater.